to our grantee resources page. So you'll be able to access it there. And then also wanted to do some quick introductions for who we have on the line from the state side and then also the Colorado Community Action Association. So again, I'm Alex Versio, the grant administrator for CSBG. Also on the line, we have Audrey Field, who's the financial assistance manager for the Division of Local Government here at DOLA. And she may want to say hello real quick and also may not, but I'll give her a quick chance. Okay, we'll keep moving along. Also, we have Josiah Massengale from the Colorado Community Action Association and Blake Duval as well. So I'll give them a quick chance to say hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Blake. Thanks for joining.
And they will be helping me to answer questions as we go along. So I appreciate their joining and hosting this call. I think we will jump into everything that we have to cover. Again, if you have questions, feel free to send them in by chat or just unmute yourself and jump in. So what we're going to be going over today is an overview of the CARES Act funds again. We'll also be going through the updated reimbursement request form. We created a new form to allow you to draw down your CARES Act funds and your regular CSBG allocation at the same time. And the reason that we did that was because those funds were added to your existing contract. And so it made the most sense to allow you to draw those down at the same time. And then we also wanted to cover some of the backup documentation requirements for the request. And so we'll again wanted to give you a chance to ask some questions about that as well, because we know that there's always some complications with that and want to make sure that we're on the same page as far as the documentation that's required. Josiah and Blake, anything else before we get into kind of the body of the presentation?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so just a reminder and a quick overview of the CARES Act funds again. They were added to your existing CSBG contract. You should have received your option letter between June 11 to June 15 to 17. And that would have come through DocuSign, and Nina Baumgartner would have been listed as the kind of person that it came from. Those funds are eligible for expenses dating back to March 27, so there's some pre-award costs that are eligible there. The budgets, we're requesting budgets within 30 days of when you receive that option letter, and the budget template is posted to the grantee resources page. So if you need to access that template, you can find it there. And then the last, probably most important thing, and the reason why we're holding this webinar is that you'll need to track the CARES Act funds separately from your regular CSBG allocation. So both on the programmatic side to report the outcomes and on the financial side. And we'll really focus on the financial side during this webinar, but we know that the programs and finances are linked. And so I'm going to give Josiah a quick second to talk a little bit about the programmatic reporting and how that will be split out.
Thanks, Alex. And we wanted to highlight this during this webinar because the question was brought up in the first webinar earlier this week. The quick answer is we don't yet know exactly what the programmatic reporting requirements are going to look like because we haven't heard from our federal partners at the Office of Community Services exactly what it is. So we're waiting on that guidance. When we think about things and we know that we have to track CSBG regular and care separately, we know that we're probably going to need to somehow be able to collect all that separately and then it's going to be submitted separately. And again, just a reminder to everybody, please mute yourselves if you don't have a comment or a question to keep down on background noise. So as soon as we hear from OCS about exactly what the programmatic requirements are going to look like, we'll let you know, and then we will certainly be providing training and technical assistance around that. And feel free to jump in with any questions around that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Josiah. Yeah, and I'll give a quick second for any questions around the programmatic reporting. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure as we move along through this process, some of those questions will come up, and of course, reach out to us as they do. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight this real quick, kind of at the start of the webinar around the financial tracking, and really reference the uniform guidance that really outlines what your accounting system should be able to do in order to track these funds. So this is a portion of the uniform guidance 2 CFR 200, and this is of course 302, and this is where it talks about your financial management system or accounting system. So the section that I've highlighted here, it says the non-federal entity, which is a complicated way of saying you, the organization, your financial management system must be sufficient to permit the preparation of reports required by general and program-specific terms and conditions, and the tracing of funds to a level of expenditures adequate to establish that such funds have been used according to the federal statutes, regulations, and terms and conditions of the federal award. So basically what they're asking there is that your accounting system or your method of tracking expenditures can be traced down to those individual expenditures that they can look at to ensure that they're in line with the federal and programmatic requirements of CSBG. And that's where they also want to see that distinction between the regular CSBG funds and the CARES Act funds, because they have different eligible service dates, and then they also correlate to different outcomes. And so that's what we're really looking for to make sure that your accounting systems meet that requirement. For submitting reimbursement requests for the CARES Act funds. Again, the CARES Act funds should be drawn down at the same time as your regular CSBG funds, and we created an updated reimbursement request form to allow you to do that. With that new form, you only need to start using it once you start drawing down your CARES Act funds. I know that we just moved to using a new reimbursement request form at the beginning of January, and so we're having to make a change again, but obviously the pandemic and the CARES Act was not something that we expected happening. So apologize about the quick change on what's required there. And then we also wanted to address the question of how frequently you need to report. The current program manual says that if you receive over $100,000 annually through your CSBG allocation, you should report monthly, and then agencies receiving less than 100,000 will report quarterly. And so what we'd like you to do is total up your CARES Act and your 2020 CSBG allocation, and if they are greater than $100,000, you should start reporting monthly once you start drawing down those CARES Act funds. And that will really help us to identify any issues or any anything that extra that we might need for the CARES Act, and make sure that the expenditures are in line with the plans and that we're all clear on the documentation going forward. So any questions about that before we jump into the new form? Okay. Whenever there aren't any questions, I always think I either did a really great job explaining things or a really terrible job explaining things. So I'm hoping it's on the side of a great job. So I'm gonna actually switch my screen over to, whoops.
Hey, Alex, it's Josiah. We got a question in the chat. It's saying reimbursement, reporting or reimbursement requests. And I think it refers to and correct me if I'm wrong, Missy, who asked the question. I think she's referring to the how often they need to be submitted.
That would be for the reimbursement request. Yeah, so sorry about the kind of ambiguous language there. We would want monthly reimbursement requests from the agent.
Okay, let me put this on mute.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, anything else? Thanks, Josiah, for bringing that up. Okay, so I'm going to shift over to the new reimbursement request form. I just wanted to run through this real quickly with you. Can everybody see the updated form? Josiah, are you seeing that Excel spreadsheet with the
Yes, sir.
updated form? Okay, great. I always got to double check that. It's pretty similar to the previous form that we had, but we made some adjustments. We split it into 2 pages to really split out those 2 funding sources. And then the other thing that we did is we highlighted all of the fields that you would need to fill out on the form. So all of the fields that are kind of in this peach color is something that you would need to fill in. And the rest of the fields are locked and actually will auto-populate with the information that you enter into those peach-colored fields. And we did this to kind of create a summary of the 2 funding sources on this first page for the responsible administrator. I know that in some cases the person signing is not the person that's filled out the report, and so we wanted to have this first page kind of provide a snapshot of the amount that's remaining and being requested from each funding source. And then the second page goes into a little bit more detail, and that's where you enter the information for each funding source. So we'll just kind of run through this together, and if any questions come up as we go along, feel free to jump into them. So the grantee organization obviously is pretty straightforward. We'll just enter organization A in there. And then the contract number starts with L18 CSBG, and then each agency has a unique 2-digit number at the end. And so you'll want to make sure that you include that. So we'll just, as an example, say L18 CSBG 18. The payment request number, you'll just want to keep on adding onto that number from the beginning of the contract. And you should be pretty familiar with that field by this time. We'll just put 25 in there as an example. And then the final payment field is just a yes or no question about whether this is your final payment for the contract. When it is your final payment, you'll put yes here, and you'll also indicate that in the grants portal. And that will actually close down your project in the portal and will not allow any reports to be submitted through the portal after that. So you want to make sure that it's the final payment when you do that. So we're going to put no there for now. The reporting period is going to be the time frame in which the payments were made by your organization. So this is probably more key for those of you that have subrecipients. But we're going to enter the reporting period. We're going to say that this was the May request. And so we'll put those dates in there. And that's really all you need to fill out for the top section. In this lower section, you'll see the total CSBG, including both the regular and CARES Act funds currently being requested. And that will auto-populate with the information on the second page, and we'll jump back to that once it's filled in. And then we'll also require you to enter the total contract amount, which includes both your CARES Act and regular CSBG funds. And that number can be found in the grants portal. And you should be pretty familiar with where to find that. So we're going to use $100,000 as an example. And then also we have here the total contract balance before this request, and that number can also be found in the grants portal. And that's all that needs to be entered onto the first page. Of course, we need the responsible signature of the responsible administrator or authorized individual, but that is not something that you would be typing into that field. Any questions on that first page? Pretty straightforward. And just a reminder, these fields are locked, so if you try to enter something into there, you won't be able to. And the reason why we did that is because we have a couple formulas that we wanted to make sure that they remain intact so that everything totals up correctly. Okay, we'll move on to this second page. Again, everything on this page is something that you should be familiar with from the previous forms. We just split it out between the 2 funding sources. so the service dates, especially for those of you that have subrecipients, this may be different than the reporting period. And this is really meant to capture the time frame in which the services took place. So for instance, if a subrecipient did some activities in March and they submitted that, or excuse me, in April, and they submitted that invoice to you in May, and you paid that invoice in May, you would want to make sure that the service dates that you list here really capture those activities that took place in April. And we just got a quick question from somebody here that I'll refer to. And it's if we only billed regular CSBG for April and they need to bill down for COVID, should you add it to the May request or do a separate request for the COVID April by itself? So that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. And this is why we really allowed you to list different service dates for both of those funds. We recommend that you actually include it on the same request. And so you would include it in this lower section that we'll get to in just a minute, and make sure that those service dates go back to those activities that took place in April. And depending on your billing processes, if you're not ready to bill that on the May request that's due in just a couple of days, you can also submit that on your June request that you submit next month, or next month. And but if you're ready to submit them now, you can go ahead and do that. And that's just where it's really important to make sure that you have these service dates that cover the actual time period of when those services took place. So yeah, thanks for that question, appreciate it. Just jumping back to where we are up here. Again, I think we've covered the service dates question, and I know that this is something that we just started at the start of this year, is having separate service dates from the reporting period. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. And so we're just going to enter the service dates as for including April, just in case, you know, if you have subrecipients that may have had some activities that took place in April. And we'll put them at the end of May. And if I already covered this, I just wanted to explain why we started to request those service dates. And that's because it's really important that, you know, with the state fiscal rules and the federal rules as well, that the services actually take place within the contract period. And so, you know, you can make payments after the contract period has been completed, but all of the services need to take place within the contract, you know, eligible contract period. And so that's why our accounting department has requested that we capture these dates on the form and in the grants portal. Okay, so I think hopefully we've covered that pretty well. The indirect, direct, and subgrantee obviously is something that you're quite familiar with and has been a part of our reporting for a long time. So we'll just enter some numbers in there. And with the indirect funds, you should only fill in the indirect into the indirect field if you have an indirect cost rate, a federally negotiated indirect cost rate, or you're taking a 10% de minimis. If you are directly allocating your facilities and administrative costs, you'll want to report those those facilities and administrative costs under this direct operating personnel line. But that's something that I think we should already have hammered out with you. Under subgrantee, we'll just enter an amount here. And as you can see, some of these areas are totaling up. Under this budget line section, I know this is a bit confusing because you submit budgets to us with categories, but these budget lines should match what's in the grants portal. And as you know, those budget lines are just split out by option letter and formulaic and discretionary, which only some of you that serve multiple counties, you know, have those discretionary funds as a part of your contract. So we will just use a quick example, and then we will do discretionary. And then we will, as you can see, there's a total here for the total amount of expenses. So we'll say that we're drawing down 12,500 from one line and the 500 from another line. And this really helps the people that are approving the request after me that aren't quite as familiar with the CSBG request to be able to look at this and make sure that it matches the budget lines that you've requested the funds from in the grants portal. So that's it for the regular CSBG allocation. Moving on to the CARES Act, you would do the same thing. So we'll use the example of that somebody mentioned with the start date that, you know, for CARES Act funds that go down, you know, start previously. So we'll just say that those activities started on March, the CARES Act are only eligible for expenses starting on March 27th. So we're going to start with that date. March 27, and then we'll say that those go through April 30, 2020. Indirect, direct, and subgrantee, as you know, the same as above. So we're going to enter in something that's pretty similar. And then here's where you would identify that you were drawing these funds down from the CARES Act. And agencies that only serve one county are just going to have one budget line there, so you can just put CARES Act funds. Agencies that serve multiple counties will have some discretionary funding as well. So you may need to draw down from two budget lines there, but again, you would just enter the amount that you've requested. And then that will total up, and these two numbers should match. And then the last field that you'll need to enter is the CARES Act balance before this request. And I'm going to show you real quick. You'll probably have a record of this on your side as far as how much CARES Act funding you have remaining, but you can also find this number in the grants portal. So I've shifted to a new screen. I hope everybody, Josiah, can you see the new screen that I've pulled up here? Okay, great. In the grants portal, under the financial tab in the budget section, you can find, you'll see each of the budget lines for your project there, and you can go down and find your CARES Act budget line, and then you'll see the balance that's remaining there. And so that's where you can pull that number from the grants portal and enter it into that, that CARES Act balance before this request line. Again, it should match records that you have on your side. You should have a tracking system, you know, for how to keep track of how much you have remaining of CARES Act funds. But we also wanted to show you where you could confirm that amount here as well. Got another quick question. If the CARES Act funding came in a single option letter, should we reference that option letter in the budget line for the CARES Act? So yes, if you received it in one letter, which was probably option letter number 7 or number 8 for most of you, it would be helpful if you could enter that that option letter into the budget line, so that again the people approving it after me can take a quick look and make sure that that matches what's in the grants portal. So yeah, thanks for that question. So we will enter the CARES Act balance. We'll say that that amount is 40,000. And so then you should get the balance after this request that automatically totals up there. If we scroll back up to the first page, we'll see that all of this has started to fill out. So you'll see the service dates that came up from that second page. You also see, oh, we got off on our math here somehow, but with our numbers, but
I think we need to switch back to your Excel spreadsheet view.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you. Appreciate that. I hope I didn't get too far.
No, not too far.
I think we'll jump back down to that second page. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I think, yeah, we'll just jump back there and reference that question again that came through about whether you should indicate the option letter that the CARES Act funds came through. And yes, I added that in here to the budget line, so I appreciate that question. And then also filled in the CARES Act balance before this request. And as you can see, that automatically totals up the amount that's remaining after this request. Scrolling back up to the first page, you'll see that all of these fields have automatically filled in. So you'll have the service dates for your regular CSBG funding. You'll have the amount that was requested. You'll have the amount before this request, and then after this request of the regular CSBG funding. And then you'll see all of that same information for the CARES Act funds with the service dates, the amount that's being requested, and then the amount that's remaining. So that is the form. Any other questions? Okay. I'm sure if those questions do come along, please feel free to reach out and be happy to walk through that with you individually if need be. And we're gonna switch back over to the PowerPoint. Okay. So the backup documentation requirements. So again, splitting these two, the activities between these two funding sources, there should be a clear distinction in your backup between the two funding sources. And because all of your accounting systems are a little bit different and the backup documentation that you submit is a bit different, we can work with you on a case-by-case basis to make sure that your system meets the requirements, and really encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions about what this will look like. I also, we got a quick question about whether this form has been sent out. And we did send the form out. We can resend it out to you if you don't have it for some reason. If we missed you on the email, that would be great to know so that we can make sure that we go back and get you added to our contact list to receive these types of emails going forward. And then we're also working to get these forms updated to our grantee resources page so that you can access them there when you need them. About the going back to the backup documentation, again, it's going to be a little bit different for each agency. So if you have questions about what we need to see, please reach out to us. It will be the same, the same requirements for the CARES Act funds as for your regular CSBG expenditures, with your monthly cost summary and GL that have all of that required information. And then I also wanted to pull up this monthly cost summary example. This is something that we've started to use with agencies that have subrecipients, and some agencies are using it for their direct costs as well. And this is kind of a standard form that helps us to really easily review the expenditures, and if it's for your direct expenses, needs to be combined with your general ledger to match up the expenditures. But it really goes through all of the expenses that you would have, and the information that we need for each one of those expenses. And as you can see, we have the service dates and the date of payment, description, vendor, and amount that's listed there. If you were using something like this form, you would want to submit one form for your regular CSBG expenses and another separate form for your CARES Act funds. And that would really help to clearly break up those two funding sources and the expenses that are associated with each of them. If you would like to start using this form, it really has helped us to speed up some of our reimbursement processes since it's standard and we know exactly where we need to look for the information on it. So and we know that it's all there as long as the fields are filled in correctly. So I can send this to you after the call if this is something that you're interested in.
Alex, this is Josiah. Just to clarify, this form would be on top of some type of general ledger report that would be submitted. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
your direct expenses, if you're using a monthly cost summary like that, it would need to be combined with your general ledger. And I would basically go through and match up the expenses on that monthly cost summary with what's in your general ledger. So yeah, thanks for clarifying. And then also the desk monitoring, we'll be conducting that at the same time as your regular CSBG expenses on the same schedule. So that would be for March and September expenses. And the same requirements for documentation for those as well. Wanted to direct you to some resources that we've put together about this. Of course, we have our grantee resources page that we, try to make sure is really up to date with all of the different resources that we have for CSBG. I also sent out, when I sent out the form, PDF instructions for the new form that really just gives a quick overview of what that looks like. And I'm going to shift over to that real quick. So this is, the form that we just went through. As you can see, just a quick explanation of where you can find some of the data for both fields. And it goes through the first page and second page, and then a little bit of explanation about the service dates, expenses, budget lines, and the CARES Act funds balance. And then also wanted to show the guide that we have for submitting a reimbursement request through the grants portal. So that process has changed a little bit. And so we wanted to make sure that our guide for submitting that request is updated for the new form. And so again, we sent this out with the reimbursement request form, but just wanted to pull it up here as well. And of course, this goes screen by screen through submitting a request. So hopefully that will be helpful for you. And that really concludes our presentation. Any other questions that we haven't gotten to so far? Josiah and Blake, anything that you want to add that you think we maybe missed?
I just wanted to add that CCAA is also here to help. I know you're a great resource as well, Alex, and everyone over there at DOLA. But Colorado Community Action Association is also available to help game plan around any of the CARES Act funds and accounting for those.
And I'll just jump on that and make note that Blake actually was working for a local entity during the ARA era, and he was doing the financial and accounting work. So he's a great resource. Lean on him.
Great. Yep. Thank you. And again, I would just second that and say that Blake is a great both Blake and Josiah have a lot of experience with CSBG and are great resources, and encourage you to really take advantage of their knowledge and their expertise.
Hey, Alex, this is Pat Steinkirchner in Grand Junction.
Yep.
So can you, and I logged in just a few seconds late, and I apologize for that, but can you remind me, I saw we need to submit a budget to you, is that right, for the CARES Act funding? And how much detail does that need to come in?
So we've posted a template to the grantee resources page. I can resend that template to you just after the call. But it's in our standard template for the budget, the annual budgets that you submit. So and
the reason I'm asking about detail is we've got kind of a general idea as a tripartite board, but they're really struggling with specifics. And so to get a budget is going to be a challenge because they haven't made up their mind.
Yeah.
But from a general standpoint, I kind of know which direction they're going. But whether it's going to be salaries or contract labor, that's yet to be determined.
Okay. So what I would recommend, and we do encourage you to move forward as quickly as possible. I know that it's difficult to especially, you know, when you're working with a number of people, to make sure that everybody's on board and to really work out those specifics. And so our guidance is really to submit as detailed of a budget as possible. If we need additional detail, we'll probably reach out to you when you submit that initial budget. And then as that information becomes more clear and plans become more finalized, then we'll just ask that you submit us an updated budget that reflects the latest information.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
And this is
Yeah,
Josiah. Thanks for that question, Pat. And that would go with the activities being planned under the CARES Act as well. As that evolves, we'll look at that and update the master activity spreadsheet that you all work on programmatic wise as well.
Great.
Okay, just wanted to, I'm getting a few questions here and there about sending some of the resources, and I'll be sure to follow up with each of you after the call to make sure that you get those resources. So thank you for that. Okay, unless there's anything else, I think that we will conclude for today. I appreciate, again, you all attending, and we'll be posting the recording as soon as possible, and we'll look forward to seeing those reimbursement requests coming through with the CARES Act and really seeing those funds having an impact on your community. So Josiah and Blake, anything you want to add before we end the call?
Just thanks to you and Audrey at DOLA, and thanks to everybody for joining.
Great. Well, I hope everybody has a great day and a good rest of the week, and we will look forward to hearing from you soon.
Take care.